we're going to deliver video to these people in a way that they haven't, been able to get it before. And I thought my biggest competitor, well, every entrepreneur, you first start off thinking, I have no competitors. Then I thought, oh, no, it's because everyone has a competitor. It's just, who's your competitor? So I thought, okay, maybe my competitor is the television, companies, the studios and the TV broadcasters. Yeah. Because that's where people watch. That's the only place you can watch. I was wrong, and I didn't realize until I got there, till I moved there, that my competitor were these little cigarette stands that were everywhere in the country that allowed people to sideload video content to the SD card in their phones.
Wild.
When they bought their cigarettes or their chips or their whatever snacks.
This season on the Unicorn Leaders podcast, we are exploring the Davids who take on the Goliaths, the giants. Founders who see the world shifting before anyone else does, and they run toward the opportunity instead of away from the risk. My name is Fahd. I'm the founder of Unicorn Labs and the host of this Unicorn Leaders podcast. And today's guest is actually a good friend. Is someone who I've spent some time getting to know and working with closely. But he's someone that's lived this David versus Goliath story across continents, across eras of the internet. He spent his career inside major tech companies like DoubleClick, MSN, and Yahoo. His name is Ray Newal. And Ray has seen what happens when Goliaths miss the moment, when they miss the wave and they don't actually surf it. And he was on the front lines as the web shattered the old walled gardens, as search rewrote advertising, and as Google and Microsoft fought for web dominance. But Ray's real David vs. Goliath chapter begins when he left the comfort of corporate tech behind and he moved to India with nothing but 2 bags and a belief: the next billion users deserve better access than the world was giving them. He was interested in bringing access, streaming video access to the masses in India, and not for the wealthy few. The market was unfortunately built for the wealthy few who had smartphones and broadband, but there were millions who were watching pirated video clips side-loaded at these cigarette stalls. And he had to figure out how to compete with these entrenched habits, how to deal with outdated infrastructure, and the competition of global tech giants. That journey shaped just about everything that came after, from founding companies across borders to mentoring founders through Techstars to helping build ecosystems in India and Canada to at one point leading the C100 network and backing the next wave of Davids as they take on their own Goliaths. Today, Ray is a coach, he's a mentor, he does work with Davids, and he's building an ecosystem of founders. Ray's story isn't just about beating Goliath. It's about learning who the real Goliath is in your battle, to not pick the wrong fight and not pick the wrong area of importance. Adapting faster than the incumbents and staying close enough to your competitors and to your customers to see what everyone else is missing. Ray, I'm excited for our conversation.
Me too, man.
This is fun. You've been around the tech space for a little while. You've seen many Davids versus Goliath. You've seen some successful Davids versus Goliath, and many Davids that don't make it actually fall to Goliath. And so I'd like for our guests to get to know you a little bit. Where does your journey start? We're gonna go through all the different kind of phases and get to know you, your journey, and some of the experiences you've had, and maybe share some wisdom around what you've seen. I say, like, what are the Davids that win, and what kind of leadership do they have?
Okay.
What sort of teams do they develop? And then what sort of strategies do they implement? And at the same time, what are the fumblings of these Goliaths?
Yeah.
So those are the 4 sort of lessons we'll take away as we go through the stories, but that's
well, the funny thing is I've spent all my career working in tech and largely internet companies, and I'll weave the journey in a second. But one of the things that's common amongst like every tech company out there is that they all started as a David, right? And it wasn't always that the Goliath was their direct competitor. Sometimes the Goliath was like a way people did things before. If you think about Xerox, photocopy company, people, printed a lot. They photocopied a lot. Did they really see kind of email coming, right? Like when you think about every shift that technology enables, it's always a David that could kind of see a different way of doing it, a way of doing it cheaper, faster, better, more efficiently, higher quality, what have you. I grew up in Toronto, and one of my first jobs, actually my first job, was working in a library.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Which library?
North York Central Library,
Shout
right?
out.
And yeah, I was a page. So it was my job to shelve books and to, basically sort them and do all the things that you would do in the library. I was 14 until I was, 19. I would get in trouble all the time because instead of shelving books, I would be in a corner hiding, reading the latest issue of Wired magazine. I learned that I loved technology, and I was just like, I couldn't get enough of it, and I was surrounded by it. And then I got introduced to the internet, and it was just at the time that it was going graphical. So the internet was around for a while, but it was text-based and pretty boring. And then all of a sudden in 1994, Mosaic came out, and Mosaic was the first graphical web browser. I was just like, what the hell is this? This is insane. Wait a minute. I don't need to go to the library anymore? Like all this stuff is now like here and it's graphical. I was just blown away with two things. One was the ability to access all this information from like a computer. And secondly, I started to go to the computer science lab at York University where I went to school. I realized you could talk to people from anywhere on this thing. And you were not confined by long distance fees anymore. And this was never really accessible to anyone before. I was just mesmerized with that. So much so that I went and I set up the internet. I was non-technical. I was studying economics and pre-law. Putting the internet on your computer requires connecting an external modem and getting that modem to connect to another modem with all these squiggly kind of fax machine type noises. And then you have to launch another piece of software, and then you get to launch email or you get to launch a browser. And so there was a process, and I made it work. And I was like, okay, this is really amazing. And there's going to be a lot of people who are non-technical that are probably going to come online. So I think that I should bring my gift of being able to make this work to other people. And so I called up these guys who I read about in a computer magazine who were building an ISP in Toronto called InfoISP. An ISP is an internet service provider. And so this was not a thing until then. There was AOL and CompuServe, which was kind of like this. And I called up these guys and I said, hey, I'm like a kid, but I just set up this stuff on my computer and I think I can probably do tech support. So you should give me a shot at doing tech support for you. And they said, okay, come on in. So I went on in and they decided to hire me. And I was over the moon because like I now had like a tech job. Yeah. I was not very technical, right? So
Like I set up the internet.
right? I know how this works. And so the interesting thing was, I didn't last very long at that job. But the other thing was that Windows 95 came out. And Windows 95 made all the work that I did to get the internet working on my computer go away. Windows 95 had all that stuff built in. You didn't need to launch this other software to connect with the modem and everything. It just knew. It just did it.
Yeah.
And I guess that was my first exposure to how companies like Microsoft think. But when they went in hard.
Yeah.
And it just became like, MSN and Hotmail and all built into the operating system. And so, Microsoft became the Goliath.
Yeah.
Right? Who was the incumbent player? The incumbent players were AOL and CompuServe, which had built these services around this kind of walled garden. What started to happen because of the browser was all of a sudden the walls came down.
Isn't that interesting as a theme? Like so often that the walled gardens are what get disrupted in a lot of these.
Yeah.
And I've got to find more examples, but it's interesting. Like often people will look at Apple as the walled garden that survived. Like they were, oh, look, they did it. They vertically integrate. Yeah, but I think they're the outlier. Most walled gardens fail.
Yeah.
And it's, like Android takes on way more than iOS in terms of the amount of people they serve. Microsoft ends up, as an operating system. Now, does Apple have a greater quality? We sort of kind of point to it and go, yes, but it's interesting. So often the disruption is that the Goliath was trying to protect its status quo, put its arms around, you have to do things my way so I can make some money off it. And David coming around and going, nope, I'm gonna let anyone.
Yeah. And I think if you think about like Apple as an example, right? Like there's always these core tensions. You talk a lot about core tensions. So core tensions, there's core tension between the walled garden that equates to an incredible user experience and access, ubiquitous access. The ability to plug into anything, the ability to be universally interchangeable, right? For the longest time, what Apple has done very well is they have held onto and delivered on the promise of Apple, which was a better user experience. But when that begins to erode and you begin to feel like, I just want to have like a standard USB adapter. Why do I have to buy this stupid, why do I have to plug in my Magic Mouse
Yes.
when it needs charging and I can't use it?
Yeah.
So what happens is that begins to fray. And so the core tension of ubiquitous access and interchangeability and all those things begin to equate to user experience. And at that point, the walled garden is down. And I think Microsoft saw that. They saw that actually the real value initially in the internet wasn't around building the walled garden around content. It was around connectivity. It was around access. It was around email. It was around Messenger, right? Anyone remember MSN Messenger? Right? MSN Messenger, Hotmail.
MSN Messenger was modern day Slack, like you could just message instantly anyone, right? Like
And that was incredible at the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, like this was the world that existed in the early part of my career where I became a deal guy I realized I was terrible at tech support, but I was good at selling.
Yeah.
And, I talked my way into many, many jobs in my career. And the first one in advertising was at a company called DoubleClick. And, they were laying the plumbing for internet advertising. And why was internet advertising important? It was important because most of the internet in the early days was predicated on being free. So how do you keep a business model that allows everything to be free? You make it ad supported.
Yeah.
And so DoubleClick built a lot of the underlying kind of technology that allowed ads and ad targeting and all that kind of stuff to work. What was possible with DoubleClick? What DoubleClick could do that was pretty cool was that you could target ads based on people who went to a site and their zip code that they were coming from.
Yeah, then you could do location-based.
You could do location-based targeting. And that was like, wow, like that's pretty interesting. DoubleClick represented most of the largest websites on the internet. And I was like, man, like this is going to be very disruptive because if you think about ad dollars, everything's about to get much more efficient.
Yeah.
And
because I could target you. No, I no longer have to wait for you to watch something on TV.
No.
I'm not waiting for you to be interrupted during watching,
There's no waste.
Yep.
There's no waste. Everything is targeted and works. And we got to see that. I got to see that when, here's another story. One of my clients was BMG, a music label.
Yep.
And they had a new band that was coming out and they wanted to promote that band. And the band was targeted to largely teenage girls. This new band was going to compete with was the Backstreet Boys. So we had to figure out a way to get in front of people who would be most likely interested in this new band. How do you reach those people? And so DoubleClick represented one of the biggest search engines at the time before Google, which was AltaVista. AltaVista was where you went for the most accurate searches, right? And it was my job to sell ads on AltaVista. And so I went and bought Teen Beat magazine and a whole bunch of magazines that teenage girls would read.
This is a proud moment. This is
a proud moment. The band that we were promoting was called NSYNC. And NSYNC, this campaign had phenomenal results for BMG. The name for this type of targeting was psychographic targeting. It was getting into the mindset of what someone would be thinking or doing that is within the target market.
Yeah.
And so we put together a psychographic marketing campaign for BMG and it had insane results. Like at the time, this is 1998 and no one had ever done this before. And they're now seeing the internet turn into a major driver of interest in NSYNC, right? And again, another proof point, like efficiency, targeting.
Right, because their marketing budget was this much for the internet,
right?
And they're seeing an outsized return on that.
So they start putting more and more of it there, right? Then my next job, well, actually, I loved Microsoft so much, I went to go work for the company. I joined Microsoft working for MSN. And, this was like 2000. At this point, Microsoft owned MSN Messenger, Hotmail. They owned Internet Explorer. So they now at this point have gotten really deep into the internet game. And so anytime you default to a browser, it loads the MSN portal.
Yeah.
And so
remember that.
Yeah. You were seeing MSN
always.
and most of the 90% of computers are PCs running Microsoft.
Yeah, Microsoft, Internet Explorer, MSN. That was the
totally.
Yeah.
Right? No matter what, you ended up on a Microsoft internet property. And they sat on basically the majority of traffic on the internet in 2000, 2001.
How do they fumble this bag?
Well, so the thing is, I joined in 2000 and they have this issue. The issue is that though they represent all of this inventory of not even content, just usage, nobody values it. Nobody values
because
it.
it's
'Cause
not
you're not
giving you
really
anything.
going there actively.
Mm.
You're not going to the MSN homepage actively. You're not going on
You're just there
Hotmail.
on default.
Yeah. You're going on Hotmail to look at your email. You're not going there to look at content, right?
And content was the only sort of monetization, I guess.
Well, at that point, like where advertisers were spending money is, okay, if they were starting to put more dollars towards the internet,
Yeah.
but they were like, okay, we want brand sponsorship. We want to be
Mm.
in places where people are actively going there, right? So where are they
Right.
actively going? So at some point we're sitting on this and we have the highest traffic of any other company on the internet. And yet we're nowhere even close to the revenue that some of the media companies, other online websites are generating. And I join, and it's my job to figure out how to monetize MSN. And we realize that there's a certain kind of customer who doesn't care about where they advertise or paying like an impression value, a CPM in advertising to be on the homepage. They don't care about that. All they care about is clicks and the conversion of those clicks to purchases of some kind. And those customers, they looked like online dating customers that were selling like services, online dating services. They looked like credit card banks, credit card companies who were trying to get people to sign up for credit cards. They looked like anyone who had like an online subscription that people could sign up to and buy. And
An
those
easy transaction.
easy transaction. If it could convert, if you could track it and you could convert, you could track conversion, that was like what they were after. So what I started to realize was, wait a minute, we have all of this traffic that is just unmonetized. It's sitting there. And maybe we should sell it to the companies that don't care where it's placed. All they care about is the conversion. Because we figured out that there's some things that even on Hotmail, even on Messenger, there's a small percentage of these ads that are converting. And we started to figure out, actually, we can run an auction on that. And we can get these companies to start bidding on these ad impressions because basically they don't care about the impression, they care about the click. And then we can start helping them figure out how to get people to buy by making the ads more relevant, by allowing people to know before they click what they're getting. And it became this process of almost again, very scientific process of testing different creatives, different formats, different landing pages. And this became one of the biggest revenue streams for MSN. So we had all this traffic. It was vast. It was an ocean of ad inventory. And we could put up as many of those ads as possible and start to generate material revenue from my.
Could you target the different users, or was it just like banner ads for now?
We could target, and then, but you would do the math on whether targeting would actually generate higher ROI. And for MSN, we started to figure out, okay, well, our lowest common denominator is just filling up this inventory.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you could see DoubleClick emerging. You could see Microsoft emerging. You could see any large internet portal emerging into direct marketing powerhouses. And then Google.
Yeah. Yeah. Because Google essentially does pay-per-click and auction. So sort of combines this under a search, which is the other, sort of combines the three pieces that you're referring to here that were the value props.
Google started off as just a search engine, and they did really good search in a world where everyone else's search engine delivered maybe 50 to 60% accuracy, like meaning you search for something and 6 out of 10 times you'd get the thing you were looking for, right? Google was 80, right? So that was a step change.
Yeah.
Huge function. That was massive increase in accuracy, but they had no business model. So Yahoo said, okay, we know how to monetize. So we'll pay you X, cents every time someone searches. So Google was like, all right, we'll do that. They did that for a little while.
Do that to make some money.
We'll do this to make some money. But then Google realized, I think it was a product manager in Google that had this idea of, well, why don't we actually, make ads searchable? Why don't we make them searchable? And why don't we actually deliver the best ad possible? So I think the Google culture was one of, we hate ads. We hate these stupid banner ads.
Interruption.
Right? They're so irrelevant from what I'm looking at, and yet I'm seeing these everywhere. So what if we were to make ads relevant? And then they came up with this idea of, what if we can deliver an ad opportunity, which is what every search is, and we can help advertisers create, copy that's relevant. What'll happen is this will become very efficient at that. Became one of the most profitable business models of all time, right? So I think all in all, I would characterize that whole chapter. It was basically the Goliath was the traditional advertising industry, right? And it was TV, it was print, it was mail, and it was highly inefficient. And what the internet did, they collectively delivered a much better solution. advertisers. That created a lot of downstream effects on our attention.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's not the goal for advertisers. That's not what they're optimizing for. But even so, like that downstream effect led to the business models of social media.
100%.
Right? Of this further personalized advertising. That's sort of the efficiency here of going from mass media advertising to niche media advertising.
That's right.
All the way to the point that I think what's interesting is even social media algorithms now for organic content, they no longer optimize for who you follow, but what you're interested in.
Yeah.
Which is, again, even the organic content is starting to say, no, we're just going to try and find a way to simply, as much as possible, serve you the thing we already think you want.
They actually don't, and for many reasons, including regulatory reasons and privacy reasons, they don't want to know specifically who you are. What they're doing is they're clustering everybody.
Yeah.
And these clusters change all the time because what you were clustered in 2 years ago when you were graduating from university is very different than who you are now, kind of your second year working in, wherever, or maybe you're engaged, maybe you're about to have a kid. These are very different clusters. And so there was also this.
And they're wildly rapid iterations of these clusters. Ever notice you watch one video for a little too long and then you're served another video just like it immediately after? And then you watch that one and suddenly your entire feed is of these, for me, they're kids videos that my wife sends me because, look at this kid and look at that kid. And there's suddenly I have all these kids on my feed and I'm like, I can't keep, I've got to watch other stuff now. So my feed, my algorithm resets. So I'm like, wait, I want to reset this algorithm because it feels like I don't even have choice over some of what I'm being served almost, right?
Yeah. But that was interesting from a business perspective to see that David and Goliath battle. And then I became a founder after that. I did a startup that took me halfway across the world. I had seen the David and Goliath happen here in North America. I felt that we were still not seeing change happen in developing countries. That was not happening in 2009.
Yeah. There's a lag period still.
That's right.
Yeah.
The internet was still only like 1 billion people at that time. And so I was like, I just was fascinated with trying to understand what it would take to get more people to move online. At that time, when I left my last job as head of content at Yahoo. So my job was buying and monetizing content. And I was like, man, if we think about people in countries like India, they're going to come online for very different things than people here. And we had just seen YouTube bought for 1.65 billion by Google. And I was like, man, video is going to be really important to these people, but they're not going to have iPhones, and it's going to be a while till they have 3G and 4G access and all that stuff. So in order for us to make this work now, we have to somehow make things like video possible on the devices they have and the networks they can afford. And so I went to India. I moved there in 2010. I look Indian. I'm not Indian. I have some Indian ancestry, but I was fascinated with the country, and I thought, hey, there's 1.3 billion people at the time. So there's got to be a market opportunity there. And I had acquired a company in building this startup that had some incredible video streaming IP. There were some folks from BlackBerry who were engineers in the company. And I went to India with this technology in my pocket that could deliver reliable video streams over edge and 2G networks to feature phones. And I thought, we're going to serve video. We're going to deliver video to these people in a way that they haven't, been able to get it before. And I thought my biggest competitor, every entrepreneur, you first start off thinking, I have no competitors. Then I thought, oh, no, it's because everyone has a competitor. It's who's your competitor? So that, okay, maybe my competitor is the television, the companies, the studios and the TV broadcasters.
Yeah.
Because that's where people watch. That's the only place you can watch. I was wrong, and I didn't realize until I got there, till I moved there, that my competitor were these little cigarette stands that were everywhere in the country that allowed people to sideload video content to the SD card in their phones.
Wild.
When they bought their cigarettes or their chips or their whatever snacks.
They do it right there.
And that's where they were doing it. So it wasn't that nobody was watching video on their phones.
It was.
They weren't streaming videos, but they were watching video, and they were getting it from these.
I think that's such an interesting theme for a lot of these Davids, is that and even the Goliaths that get disrupted, is that you don't realize who your competitor really is.
Yeah.
So One of the examples that I've been unpacking is the Savannah Bananas.
Yeah.
Have you heard of them?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they've done, something really interesting with baseball. He's now created his own league, like a banana ball. Like, they've rewritten the rules
Yeah.
because he said when he went to the league and he wanted to reform some stuff, he said our biggest competitor isn't other baseball or even other sports. He says entertainment, it's TikTok, it's Instagram, it's people want fun faster.
Yeah.
That's our competitor. Recently, interesting, like Netflix, like our biggest competitor isn't, Apple or Crave. It's YouTube and TikTok. It's the other media platforms where people will spend time on.
Well, the other interesting point, as you bring up Netflix, is your competitor or your Goliath changes
Yes.
as your business evolves. So if you go back to Netflix example, right? Their initial
Blockbuster.
their Goliath was Blockbuster. Actually, even pre-Block, I guess Blockbuster. I'd say their biggest Goliath initially was even Columbia House.
Oh yeah, because they were doing the mail out already, membership mail out.
Totally.
Yeah.
So they were there to disrupt Columbia House, and then they were there after they disrupted Columbia House. Okay, we're going to disrupt Blockbuster, right? And they were sending out DVDs in the mail. Yeah. Right? I had I was getting DVDs.
Well, it was the free no late fees.
Yes, that was 100% it.
It was.
So how you see your Goliath, defines your business model, how you make money, your customer experience.
I think that's a brilliant insight, because I think if you choose the wrong Goliath, you end up choosing the wrong strategy to disrupt.
Yes.
And that's, I think, part of the story here is like,
Pick your Goliath.
yeah, pick your Goliath.
Pick your Goliath.
Who are you going to? Whose lunch are you going to steal? Like, where's the money already flowing that you're trying to capture and siphon off?
The Henry Ford saying, right? If I'd asked my customers what they would have wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Yeah.
One of my favorite, by the way.
Yeah.
Like you got to pick your Goliath, and you got to design around the customers of that Goliath. And what does a great user experience mean in that construct?
Okay, so you realize that your Goliath is this SD card video upload
wallas. They're allowing people to sideload this illegal content, right? From their like while they buy their pun or while they
value add for them to get more cigarette customers.
Totally. So I think that was a huge realization, because when you think about it that way, you think about what that user experience is like, and you now have to be better, right? So how do you be better? How do you be better than the tobacco walla who literally is everywhere, and like every block, every corner has one of these stands throughout the whole country, right?
Yeah.
We're not just talking cities, we're talking anywhere.
Yeah.
So you now have to find a way to deliver content that they can't. Now, the content that the tobacco walla can't let you sideload is sports content.
Because that's live. That just happened yesterday.
Live, right? You can't sideload that. And, so ultimately our path into finding our market was to partner with the broadcasters, because the other thing was that, broadcasters, you always got to find who's your common enemy, right?
Team up with a Goliath sometimes.
Exactly. The broadcasters didn't like the sideloading either, because their content was getting ripped off. It was all pirated. It was all illegal, right? So in a sense, there is another lesson here for the David and Goliath, which is, you have to be very intentional around how you disrupt, right? What's the path to disruption? And it doesn't always start in the lion's mouth.
Yeah. If you put a target on your back a little too early.
Exactly. Right?
Right. That was actually something that Stuart from Ecobee shared. He said, when we did the big product innovation with Ecobee 3, it took Nest 5 years to catch up, and it gave us those 5 years to just build the momentum.
Yeah.
And they were in the spotlight, like they knew about them. But I think that's interesting. Like, it's like, how quickly does your Goliath react or even know you're around?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you partner with your enemy. The enemy, my enemy, is my friend in this case. David needs some partners, so he finds himself another. Yeah.
We started becoming a partner for broadcasters and content owners to reach this audience that at that point was not reachable through a phone, through a mobile device. And very quickly we found ourselves embedded in Nokia devices and other devices that were used in India, and we blew up. We got to, millions and millions of users. I think the last count was 50 million users, right? And it wasn't that people knew they were downloading our app. The broadcasters, it was really important for them to have brand control. So we became this kind of brandless wrapper for their content. And at the end of the day, we started pricing this as if it was like we were charging for the content delivery, right? We were like a CDN, a content delivery network. And this was how we started to gain users. So we had to find a way to get the right content. We had to make sure it was reliable and got to the phones. We had to make sure that users would care about it.
Yeah.
Right. And we had to make sure that it was content that wasn't necessarily available from the sideloaders. And so this took that, one of the other things about being a founder is you have to be very close to your customer. You have to be close enough to know who the Goliath is.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you don't know who the Goliath is, you can't really engineer the experience that's going to convert them. And if you're focused on the wrong Goliath, then you're definitely not going to create an experience that's going to convert them.
Yeah.
And so that was the lesson out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. What's actually going to get them to switch from their current behavior?
Exactly.
Now, you've learned some lessons in building the team.
Yeah.
What does a David team need to have to be able to survive long enough to find an opening, to find a slingshot that they can actually take to eat away at a market and actually find its space? What was some of the team principles, I guess, you learned along the way in this journey?
Well, I think I would back up a sec and say that timing is everything. And in these David and Goliath moments, you can't be too early and you can't be too late.
If you're too eager to get your slingshot off, like
if you were Netflix and launched with video on demand, pre-broadband, right?
Doesn't matter. Yeah,
it would never have worked, right? So we've seen many instances of innovations that eventually became successful Davids, right?
Yeah.
But that maybe in other permutations from competitors didn't end up that way. They actually failed.
Yeah.
The Apple Newton as an example, right? Like could have been an iPad, could have been, why wasn't it as ubiquitous as some of the other tablets that came out? Well, because there was no internet, right? It was like a dead device. You have to be very precise at understanding where the market is, where the user experience is, and how technology or market forces can actually improve it in some type of step change function. That takes the right team. And the right team also is an evolution. So the right team at the entry point of a David into one of these kind of inflection points looks very different than the team that exists in that business as they've kind of moved into the maturity of that. We talk about S-curves in innovation, right? And there's an S-curve, which is the emergence, right? And the team at emergence is very much like a startup team. It's very small, it's nimble. It has enough signal and understanding of how to assemble these resources in a way that can fundamentally improve on, some type of a customer-facing metric, usually resulting in better customer satisfaction. And they have to get that right. But then as you get through, you move into the maturing part of the S-curve, right? As you see things begin to scale, right? You get into different challenges that a team needs to be able to address.
Mm-hmm.
And so to be able to take something from its early days to making it ubiquitous and widely kind of accessed. And by the way, that's where you really overcome the Goliath. That takes a different type of team. That takes different kinds of leadership. That's more about building a system. And then you, of course, get into where that innovation, again, then becomes a commodity, right? And so if you're trying to build an enduring business, you have to be very well aware of where the next S-curve is. Because if you stay too long in that commodity space, and this is where this is the classic innovator's dilemma, is the team you've engineered that's really good at milking profits out of that commodity is not the team that's really good at detecting and capitalizing on the next S-curve.
Yes.
Right? And so in that instance, what happens is you're ripe for disruption.
How do you think of smaller Davids? How do they compete with that? That's the, as the Goliaths have become, the Goliaths are raising their own little Davids, right? They're sort of planting them, and they're, I mean, if you think about it, their number one strategy is acquisition, because they let the Davids go through the first 1 to 20 million, 30, go through the process of product market fit, because that's the area where you lose most of them. Most of them die, but they're innovating at a market that's been proven and satisfied. So I guess that's part of the strategy of how they stay on top of these things, right? They just keep purchasing, buying them out.
Acquire, you fold some of them into your product. Some of them you just shut down.
You just shut down. You just
yeah.
The strategy is buy them out.
Exactly. Buy them out and shut them down.
We've talked about some of the David strategies. We've talked a little bit about the type of team and how the team evolves. What do you think about the leadership of these Davids? What kind of leaders do they need? How should the leadership act, or what kind of mindsets and characteristics do we look for in these founders and in these Davids who are leading these teams?
I think you're looking for people who are prepared to fight wars, right? You're looking for commanders, and they see it as war. They see it as a full-scale battle. The Goliaths don't see it that way. The incumbent players never see it that way. They see it. They've kind of built. They've got their machine. They're kind of sitting there with their market share and their valuations, their share price, or what have you. And they're like, yeah, like we're good. We're impervious, right? But people, these founders who are very well aware that they're the David, they're ready for battle, but they also can visualize being successful. And so I think a lot of the times, at least in my work with founders, if you can't visualize it, it ain't gonna happen, right? And so what I spend time with founders doing is doing very deep visualizations. So there's this exercise we do where we zoom out to, or we, I guess, fast forward to the moment in time where you have prevailed.
Mhm.
You have effectively disrupted the Goliath. So when in time is that? And let's be as descriptive as possible.
Yeah.
What does your company look like?
Yeah.
What does your product look like?
Mm.
What do your users look like? What does the experience look like? What does your life look like as a leader? So I try to get them very planted in that moment of understanding what their business will have looked like. We talk about maybe it's 5 years out, maybe it's 10 years out. What changed? What changed? What was it in the technology that shifted? Was there an innovation? What was it in the market? What was it on the customer demand side?
Yeah.
And then it's never going to be right.
No.
But you are building a sense of understanding the dynamics of innovation. As a founder, you have recognized who are the important people to help you identify the signal of what's needed right now to move you along this trajectory to disrupting in the way you want to, right? And so that team, and it never looks one way. It's not like you can't characterize it by saying, oh, you need a CEO, a chief product officer, a chief engineer. No, it changes. And we're seeing that change right now.
Yeah.
Where, you can leverage AI tools in a really significant way. But what AI tools can't give you is a sense of the market.
Yes.
Right? You need to know your market.
Yeah.
And so, this is what a founder.
But they can get you to tests for a lot faster.
They can.
I think you can rapidly experiment faster than you've ever been able to before.
With AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can deploy many tools. You can deploy more experiments. You can just, get it out there. And I think that's the advantages of being a David.
The other issue, though, the issue of being able to do that much testing that much faster is that if you're a founder that is not really attached to a problem, what happens is you go through this constant cycle.
Yep.
Of testing things and never feeling enough.
Yeah, because there's never enough
the problem.
evidence.
Yeah.
Never enough evidence.
Never.
No.
So the other thing you need is you need conviction.
You need conviction.
Right? You need to buy in.
Yeah.
You yourself need to commit to a problem.
Yeah.
Right? And believe it or not, that's the hardest part.
In this world of optionality.
Right? We can do anything we want.
Yeah, AI gives you all of these options, a million ideas available to you. It's like, why am I going to commit to this one idea?
Oh, you want to build an app? You can build an app.
Yeah.
Like, it's so easy. You don't need to go and hire a team, or whatever to go build the app. So you go build the app, and then you're like, I don't know. So you go build another app, and then
Yeah.
So I think you have to love the problem.
Yeah.
And I think that probably is the thing that is consistent amongst most of the founders that I work with, is that they feel a strong conviction to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to have spent years in it, right? But you have to be willing to commit.
Yeah. And I think that's like, again, if we pull this back, the Davids have fallen in love with the problem, and the Goliaths have fallen in love with the profits of the shareholder profits. Sort of, they've sort of the fruits.
Yeah.
They've fallen in love with the fruits of the tree versus the tree itself, or the planting of the tree, right? Like that's sort of coming back to it. Ray, this has been fun. We've gotten to know you a bit more, your story, your upbringing, your different experiences throughout. I know something that, one of the experiences that you're pulling to that we didn't even talk about is your time at Techstars, right? Also just, spending time with a lot of founders and watching these Davids and Goliaths up close and seeing the characteristics of the teams and the evolution of them.
Fantastic. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Brought me back.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
Oh, this is fun.